So there's some interesting information come out in one of the newspapers in Britain, the Daily Express I think it is, which is, we're nearly into Thursday, the 14th of April 2016. And they're talking about the amount of effort the government is putting into tax fraud versus benefits fraud. So the main thing is the relative manpower seems to be out of all kilter with what would be appropriate for the problems that they are trying to resolve. Excuse me, so you've got about 1.3 billion that's suggested is benefits fraud. So, I mean, that's a lot of money. 1,300 million. It's an awful lot of money. They've got 300 people working on trying to get that 1,300 million, that 1.3 billion back. And people who are on benefits and who cheat the benefit system, it's less money for other people. And then it's money they shouldn't be having. So, you know, good on the government for taking it off people. So that's 300 people working on that. The officially accepted figure for tax fraud, we're in the wake of the Panama Papers, of course, so this matters to people. The officially recognised figure for tax fraud is just a bit less than 30 times as much. It's 34 billion. So, given that Labour say that the official figure is way low and that the real figure is 120 billion with a B, let's say we take the official figure to start with, 34 billion. They've got, sorry, I realise why I've mixed this up now. They've got, I said 300 people were working on the 1.3 billion. I was actually wrong. I've just remembered. It's 3,000 people they've got working on the 1.3 billion. And they've got the 300 working on the 34 billion problem of tax fraud. That's why I got it the wrong way around, because it would seem proportionate to put your lightweight effort into the smaller amount of money that's being defrauded and put your heavyweight effort into the big amount of money that's being defrauded. Now, if it was one department that looked after all this with one boss, and let's say you were the boss, or I was the boss, and you're given the choice of how to spend your manpower, let's say you had 3,300 people, and you had a little bit of fraud over here, which is due to whatever, and that's 1.3 billion. And you've got a big bit of fraud over here that's 34 billion that's due to something else. You've got 3,300 people. I'm just making a wild guess. You would say to yourself that 1/30 of the people would work on the little one, because it's 1/30 as big a problem, and the other 29 out of 30 people would, 30th that is, would work on the big problem. So what's the 30th of 3,300? Well, we're lucky it's a nice even number, so it's 11, 10 times that is 110, 3 times that. Yeah, it's it warrants 11 people. 10th would be 130. Yeah, once, yeah. Yeah, you could say it's 110. That's it. 110. Get my decimal points in the right place now. You could say it warrants 110 people. Sorry, I didn't work that out beforehand. So it warrants 110 people working on the little problem. Keep my iPad alive. So you got 110 people working on the little problem. And that leaves you with your 3,290 people working on the other problem. So, just being the boss of this imaginary department that deals with benefits fraud of 1.3 billion on the one hand, we're going to put 110 people on that. And we've got 30 odd billion, 34 billion on the other hand. So we're going to put, I'm just roughly saying, 30 times as much of a problem. Put 29/30ths onto the big problem. And we'll make 3,290 people work on the big problem. But they aren't. They're making 3,000 people, this Tory government in the UK, they're making 3,000 people work on the tiny little problem of, relatively speaking, 1.3 billion, being small change for a government. I mean, it's not enough to plug the hole in some years in the post office pension system. It's not enough, it's just enough, barely, if all 1.3 billion was got back, which it never will be from the benefits fraud. It's just enough to plug the black hole that's appeared in the government's budget this year, 2016, since they pulled back from, U-turned on the cuts to disability. So, in other words, it's pretty small beer for a government. And they could be taking most of those 3,300 people that we imagine to be in one department. And we've just worked out 3,290 of them should be working on the big problem, the 34 billion tax fraud. Now that's what you would do if you're a boss of a department and you were impartial and that's what you wanted to do. But if you're a Tory government, and especially a campaign manager concerned about votes, which is what unfortunately the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, actually is. He's a campaign manager first and he is a Chancellor of the Exchequer second. So unfortunately, if you're a Tory minister like that, your concern is that you can hammer the benefits claimants as hard as you like without any fear or any problem. And all those benefits claimants who aren't fraudsters, you don't mind that they get frightened and concerned and worried and that they're, crying all day long. You don't mind that. But you won't do that to taxpayers who you think might be more likely to vote for you by a long way. So they're going to hammer the benefits claimants, all of them, just to try and tap down this relatively small amount of fraud. But they are not going to touch, really, the tax fraud problem, because they reckon there's loads of their voters are in that. And they reckon to touch it, they'd have to hammer down and put levy a weight of investigation and policing on quite a lot of people. And that will affect, they think, the votes enough so that they might not be in power next time round. And what this kind of suggests is that they actually believe that their own voters are kind of bent when it comes to tax. A little bit. There's a little bit of a suggestion that they believe that. So that's not much of a rating by the Tory government of its own voters, is it? Yes, there's the effect of levying policing on taxpayers so that even those who aren't defrauding feel the weight of someone keeping an eye on them. But you can see it's completely biased by the fact that they believe their voters aren't in one section of the community and are in another. So they're not treating people equally. And they're not even following a sensible rationale to help the country's coffers. They are only following who's likely to vote for us and who do we not want to offend. As far as the country's finances are concerned, they come a long, far away second. And it just totally, in one man, George Osborne, the fact that he's also the finance minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK, and he is the campaign manager for the Tory party, just comes together beautifully, personified by them not touching all the tax fraudsters on the one hand because of fear of policing upsetting their voters, and they're happy to hammer away all day long at the benefits people because they don't believe they get many votes from them. Pretty horrible and completely wrong priorities. Thanks for watching and listening.